Welcome to Wellness Wednesday, everyone. Thanks for being here. We're really excited to have our guest speakers, John and Emily from the JCK Foundation. They're working with communities and schools to improve mental wellness and resilience amongst teens, and you're going to hear from them a little bit later today. But first, as always, we'll go over our virtual meeting etiquette. So just so you know, this meeting is being recorded, but no faces will be included in the recording. In the chat box, there's a link where we ask that everyone sign in because we always send our slides following the presentation along with any other resources or materials that we discussed during Wellness Wednesday. We also ask that you consider renaming yourself using your pronouns so you can see how I do it as an example, along with Lulu, Aban. They've renamed to include their preferred pronouns. Also, mute yourself when you're not speaking. It looks like everyone's already doing that. That just helps us eliminate any distractions. Also, feel free to use the chat box or to write questions or comments as they may come up. In addition, you can hide the video panel at any point if you need to see the PowerPoint more clearly. And if you receive any unwanted messages or feel like you need any additional mental health support, you can privately chat Lauren Anderson. In addition, we have a mental health professional on this call if you need further support. And then additionally, we like to use the raise your hand feature. So if you click on participants at the bottom of the screen, and then if you go to the next slide, Emily, it shows you where you can click the option raise hand. And then that helps our presenters today and guest speakers be able to call on people to share out what they're thinking and what's on their mind. So next, I will turn it over to Corrine.
Thanks, Laura Beth. So I'm going to invite everybody to stand up, actually. So go ahead and take a standing position, however that feels for you. I'm going to try and see if you can get that. And we'll place our hands over our heart. We're going to take a couple of just deep breaths, deep grounding breaths. So as we breathe in, we're going to scoop up the energy and lift it overhead. And as we breathe out, palms down. It's just a couple of those. So breathing in and breathing out. One more time. Breathe in, lift it up, and breathe out. So this time, we'll breathe in, but it's going to be, we're going to scoot down. We're going to bend down and as if we're scooping up the energy and then showering ourselves with it on the exhale. So breathe in, scoop it up, and then down. And just imagine maybe your favorite color. You're just breathing in all this good, painting your body with it. One more time. And then down, and then come back up standing, and then just shake a little side to side. Because we get stuck when we're sitting all day. I've been sitting at my computer a long time, so this is really helpful. And then come back to a standing position, and you're just gently going to take one palm, and we're going to tap up and down our arms. The other side, maybe your shoulders, lightly on the chest and then down the body. Just tapping, 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 waking up the body. Because John and Emily have a lot of important information to share with us today, so we want to make sure that we're awake. And then come back to seated. I'll do a little grounding and then hand it over to them. So in your seated position, notice where your feet are. Notice the breath. Maybe you're closing your eyes or casting your eyes down. Laura Beth has a beautiful, peaceful, serene picture on the screen. Maybe you want to place a hand on your heart, maybe a hand on your belly. Notice the sounds around you. And doing the Take 5 exercise we've done before. So 5 things you can hear. If you open your eyes, 4 things you can see. 3 things you can touch. Just naming these to yourself. 2 things you can smell. And then 1 thing you can taste. So that's always a grounding exercise that you can use to help you come back to present moment awareness. So with that, I will hand it over to John and Emily.
All right. Thank you so much for that. That was really peaceful. It's always nice to get ourselves grounded before any of these presentations or any of these activities, because I've noticed big time, especially for me personally, my mind moves like 500 miles an hour. Like even before this, I'm thinking, oh, am I going to do this right? Am I going to say the right thing? Am I going to do that? Am I going to do that? And it's really nice to just, slow ourselves down like that. So thank you so much. That was awesome. And so my name's John Tessitore, and Emily Meeks is here with us as well. And we work with the JCK Foundation. And we actually, Emily's actually from Virginia. I'm from New York, and we're based up in New York. And we actually met Lauren at the Active Minds conference. And it was really awesome. We actually met at we were doing an event talking about high school programming, and we met and we followed up, and now we're here. So I want to say a very special thank you to Laura Beth, to everyone for having us here. And we're just really excited to be here. We're really excited to share our story with you. And I think today is going to be a little bit of a journey. We have a lot of different things planned for you. I think you'll get some stories, you'll get some activities, but I feel like always the more interactive and the more questions you have, I want to let you guys know we are here for you. And we want to have those conversations. That's why we do the work we do. So every question is welcome. There's nothing, no right or wrong answers to anything. We're just very much looking forward to being here with you.
So I wanted to quickly just mention that we're doing in-program polling. Like John was saying, we're going to give you guys opportunities to have a voice in the program. And don't worry about writing this down or getting this up right now, but you can respond to the polls, which are multiple choice questions, by either texting in your responses or going online if you want to open up another tab on your computer or do it on your phone through texting or online, either way. I also wanted to briefly mention the program objectives. So these are the program objectives that we have for the full Digital Legends program. So today we're going to be sharing just a part of that program just because of time. But we really wanted to focus for this little mini workshop, we wanted to focus on community building as well as reducing stigma, both of which are really important for JCK and Our Minds Matter. And we will give you guys an opportunity at the end to have a discussion in some way.
All right, so here's who we are. And it's always fun doing these things virtually. Whenever it's so nice seeing you guys all in real life, but to see your faces virtually, we're gonna try to bring as much energy through a screen as we possibly can. So who we are, we help students find new ways of connecting and building community to prevent mental illness and improve emotional wellness and resilience. What I always say is what that basically means in a nutshell is that we're here for you guys. We're here to listen, we're here to talk, we're here to have these conversations and do whatever it takes to make your life better. And that little jersey in the bottom left that you see where it says Kelly. So that was my best friend, John. And this whole foundation was started after my buddy, John. And as you'll learn a little bit later, he had an absolute heart of gold. He was one of those people that would do anything for anyone. And when he found out I had OCD, he took me under his wing and really showed me that, hey, I could live a happy and healthy life even while battling a mental illness. And I wasn't going to let it get in the way of my dreams and what I wanted to do in this world. So he is an extremely special person. And his heart still lives on today. And as you'll learn a little bit, we're going to show a clip from a documentary that I created when I was in college about John. But long story short, we're here for you. We're excited about this. And without further ado, we will actually get to that clip, and then we'll come back with some discussion.
John's energy and his
Oh, also, I just wanted to mention, because the videos are a little soft, everybody might want to turn their volume up on their own devices.
heart was just contagious. I mean, the minute we met John, we all were like, you got to come back, you got to come back, you got to come back. And John created order like overnight. Like he literally took stacks of industrial shelving, took every box down, and just created order and knew where everything was. I mean, that was the most amazing thing. He knew where every single thing was. And then kids started coming in to volunteer, and they loved him. And he had a way with the boys from CV, and he had a way with these kids from Fieldston. And every time a huge group of kids would come in, they fell in love with John. Never felt more comfortable with anyone than I have with John. His heart. It didn't matter if he was meeting someone for the first time or the 100th time. He always felt like he really cared and really just loved being with that person.
We went to the Nyack Ostomy football game. He drove me and Timmy Gardner up there, and he was way older than us, which was pretty cool that he wanted to hang out with us and, you know, spend his time with us. It was great. You know, made us feel pretty cool because everyone loved John at the time. So if you're hanging out with John, you're probably a pretty cool kid. And we watched the Nyack Ostomy game, and two unrelated schools, just, you know, big fans of the sport. And Nyack ended up winning in the final seconds. And before the game was over, you could just see John running down to rush the field with the entire Nyack fan base, all high schoolers. And he was hugging players and congratulating them. And he was just a fan of the underdog, and he just loved the passion that the kids put in the game. And he's just the most caring and excellent kid.
He was so proud to be where he was from Rivertown, from Dobbs Ferry. His spirit is emblematic of just the communal Rivertown's region. I mean, he just followed his friends so closely. He was so happy to see people achieve things, and he was just so behind everyone. And just he was someone you could always keep close to you, and someone that was, you know, always. I mean, you could just tell his friends how much people loved him, how much they rallied around him, and it's a beautiful thing.
He was non-judgmental. I think that he very much looked to the little person who maybe wasn't getting attention, so that he made them feel good.
Whenever I see that initial clip, it always brings back memories of who John was, right? And who he was to me. And we're wearing this shirt right here that says Legends. And this shirt we made at the first ever charity softball tournament that we did in his honor. And when you hear that, you just hear in people's voices just how much they loved him and how incredible he was. And I'll never forget. So I was telling you guys a little bit before, I was diagnosed with OCD in the 7th grade. And I remember being so confused and so lost. And I used to have these awful thoughts where I think if I said my prayer the wrong way, my mom would be possessed by the devil and it would be my fault. And then all of a sudden, I'll never forget, we actually went to a family barbecue, right? And, you know, he was my older brother Paul's best friend. And we went to this barbecue, and I'll never forget, he comes up to me and he goes, dude, I hear you have OCD. And I was like, wait, what? Like who told you this? And he goes, dude, our parents talk. And I was like, but why would my mom tell you this? Like, I don't get it. Why would she tell you this? He goes, John, relax. Like, I have OCD too. I'm here to tell you that you're gonna be okay, that I'm gonna help you get through this. And I remember my jaw like drops to the floor. And I was like, wait, you have these thoughts about the devil? He's like, dude, all the time. And he gives me this big high five. And I was just like, I couldn't believe it, because at that point in my life, when I was, 13 years old, I was so isolated and I was so worried. And I thought I was the only person on earth who had these thoughts. And it's amazing what the power of friendship can do, right? When you feel validated. He made my story feel like I could do something in this world. He made me feel empowered to do more and more and more. And he proved to me that you can live a happy and healthy life with OCD. And when you have that friend and when you have someone that looks out for you, it goes such a long way in our own struggle, right? Because if we could reach out to someone and tell them, hey, you're going to be okay. I've got your back. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to be there for you. It just was a whole weight lifted off of my shoulder. And that's the reason that I do the work that we do, is because John inspired me so much and he made me so comfortable with who I was. We want to do whatever it takes to make you guys feel comfortable in your own skin and in your own stories. So I think to segue to the next point, we're going to talk about stigma. And it's really interesting because as you can see, John was this incredible, incredible human that so many people love. But at the same time, it still shows, it doesn't matter how happy you are, how loved you are, you still can suffer from stigma. And I want to read out this quote that John actually wrote. So John had a long journal that he wrote from the time he was about 17 years old to the time he died when he was 24. And this one always hits me so hard, right? He wrote, "I have developed a deep sense of compassion and will crusade to help others. I feel ashamed of my sensitive behavior, but that is my nature." And that always hits me really hard because especially for a man, sometimes it's not easy to feel compassionate and you feel ashamed of who you are because you love other people and you're showing your emotions. So whenever I hear that, it always brings me back to John and reminds me of just how amazing of a person he was.
So now is the time to get your phones out to text or to go online to polev.com. So the quote that John just read that John Kelly said, "I have developed a deep sense of compassion and will crusade to help others. I feel ashamed of my sensitive behavior, but that is my nature." What type of stigma was he talking about? So you guys can go and vote A for public stigma or B for self-stigma. And let us know if you're having any technical difficulties. I'll close the poll in I would say 30 seconds to a minute after everybody's voted, and we can show the responses.
I always love the polls. We can't give away the answer this time, Emily. We've done that in the past.
Well, we'll give away the answer in our slides, but
we'll give away the answer during the rest of the presentation.
Yeah. It looks like we got a couple people that have voted.
Got 11 so far.
So Laura Beth, how many participants do we have?
We have 22, but if for some reason you're having any trouble, you can drop your vote in A or B in the chat. But I think we have like 12 students.
Okay.
That's great.
Awesome. I will go ahead, since we have 12 students, looks like most everybody's voted. Okay, so it looks like 10 of you said self-stigma and 2 of you said public stigma. So we're gonna get a little bit more into stigma later on, but just keep that quote in mind.
All right, thank you, Emily, for that. And what we do a lot with our foundation is we love to interact with our community, right? Because we always feel like the best way to connect people is by having different conversations and hearing different opinions and hearing different stories. Because like we always say, there's no one right or wrong answer when it comes to this. The more we can listen to each other and talk to each other, the more progress we can make in helping each other. So we actually asked our Instagram community, what is your definition of stigma? And before we tell you our definitions of stigma, we're going to dive into a little bit about what some people in our community said. So again, no right or wrong answers here, but I'll read these off to you. So predetermined judgments we label others with just based off of no real information, a label placed on someone for being different, the unintentional judgment of others due to institutional misunderstandings. So keep those in mind. Keep thinking about what your own definitions of stigma are, because we'll come back to this after we talk about our definitions of public and self-stigma.
So before I kind of dive into public stigma, there were a couple points that I wanted to make. First of all, just like everyone has physical health, everyone has mental health. So everybody might experience the occasional cold. Everybody might experience the occasional mental or emotional stressor. It's completely normal. It's very common. And mental illness is very common. According to NAMI, about 1 in 5 Americans will experience some type of mental health disorder sometime during their lives. But even though mental illness is really common, there's still a lot of public stigma surrounding mental illness, especially in some cultures and communities. And this is a huge problem. Mental illness may be seen not as a disease or health issue, but as a weakness or a character flaw. And those that are suffering might be embarrassed or ashamed because they are suffering from a mental illness. And if that's the case, if you are embarrassed or ashamed, then an even bigger problem with that is you might have a hard time asking for help if you need it. If you can't talk to your family or your friends about your mental health, if you can't say that you're struggling because you're embarrassed or because they'll judge you, then it might make it harder for you to ask for help. And so the reason why I want to point this out is that, you know, we shouldn't judge people because they are struggling with their mental health, which I'm sure everybody here has that mindset and that mentality. But there are a lot of risk factors that contribute to mental health that are outside of a person's control. There's risk factors that make it more likely for you to contract a mental illness, or it might make your mental illness worse if you have a mental illness. So just like I mentioned before, your social environment or even your physical environment, your family, your community, if there's a lot of stigma there, that could be a risk factor. It could make it harder for you to get help if you need it. There's other risk factors like family history or other biological risk factors. You know, if you have a relative that has a particular mental health disorder, you might also, if it's genetically linked, you might also contract that mental health disorder. And really none of these things you can't really control. So the bottom line is that if you are suffering from a mental illness or someone you know is suffering from a mental illness, it's not their fault. That doesn't make them a bad person. They do have health issues, right? And just like physical health issues can be treated, mental health issues can be treated. And if you have a mental illness, that doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a harder time in life necessarily, but it is possible to live a happy and healthy life with a mental illness, just like physical illness. So don't judge someone if they are struggling at some point.
It's a great point, Emily. And what I want to tell you all is a little bit of a story, right? So I want to tell you about self-stigma because this is something that I'm 30 years old now, and I've struggled with this really since I was 13. And, you know, I think the biggest thing for me was when I was first diagnosed with OCD, I was so embarrassed, right? I kept thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I think I'm the only person in the world with this. Like, you know, how am I going to get help for this? I don't deserve help, right? And I remember so vividly, and this is so important with my own self-stigma, is John Kelly always would try to protect me from self-stigma because he knew what it was like to suffer from that self-stigma. And when we talk about that quote that we did before, that was actually an example of self-stigma because John was ashamed of his sensitive behavior. The same way I was so ashamed of my OCD. I was so worried because I had to walk in and out of doors and I was having these bad thoughts. And if I had these bad thoughts while I was walking into my classroom, my teacher was going to get harmed. And I just remember being so upset about this and being so frustrated and being so annoyed with myself. And, you know, I was putting these extra burdens on myself with self-stigma, right? And one thing I always want to talk about, right, and I think is so important, is that every single person's story matters. And every single person's story matters the same, right? You don't have to be a celebrity for your story to matter. You don't have to be Kevin Love talking about his mental health. You don't have to be Madonna talking about it. You don't have to be Lady Gaga. You could be John from Dobbs Ferry, New York. You could be Emily from Virginia. You know, you could be Lauren. You could be Laura Beth. You could be one of you. All of our stories matter exactly the same. And I think it's so important that we know that you can be yourself and tell your own story. And your story is beautiful. And your story is going to help someone else get out of their own hole. And the more that we talk about this and the more that we're able to accept ourselves, that self-stigma starts to go away, right? And I think it's just so important that we have that self-acceptance. And I'll be honest with you, you know, I'm 30 years old now, and sometimes I still don't have that full self-acceptance. I still go back into some of my holes. I still have these bad thoughts some days, but that's okay. That's a part of the process, right? You know, we're not perfect, and that's completely fine. And we're going through it, and we're going through it together. But having people in a community and having people like Emily and having people like Lauren and Laura Beth and having each other, right? What we can do for ourselves can really, really prevent isolation, right? Because everyone is fighting a battle, you know, so don't be too hard on yourself. And we're always here for you. And I know everyone in this room is here for each other, right? And one thing that I want to bring up before we transfer into the next part of this program is the power that every single person in this room has, right? So social isolation is obviously a big risk factor to mental health, right? And John Kelly was isolating himself. He was in a tough spot because he didn't feel like he had the community to talk to. He didn't feel like he had, I was very lucky because he was like an older brother to me, right? So I was able to go with him with any of my problems. He would accept me and take me under his wing. But something that is so important, and I think that I want to reiterate, is the power that we all have to really help prevent self-stigma, right? By going out, by reaching out, by having those conversations, by preventing isolation. Because when someone's sitting there by themselves or someone is really suffering, right? I learned how important community can be to getting that person out of isolation. Because when they see you talking, when they see you being yourself and just jumping around, being that person that you are, they're going to be more likely to sit there and say, okay, maybe I can have a conversation with this person. Maybe I don't have to feel so isolated about what I'm going through. And that's just something that I think is really, really important. Everyone, hopefully, that you guys remember at the end of this presentation is the power that we all have to prevent mental health, to prevent mental illness, is by building community, preventing isolation, and being there for each other. Because myself, I suffer from OCD and I suffer from depression, but that doesn't mean that I can't help my friend who might not be suffering, who might not be diagnosed with something that's going through a hard time, right? We have that power to lift each other up. And now we're going to show a little bit of a documentary clip about John and about how our community came together and said, listen, we're going to do whatever it takes to help anyone else going through this, because, I'll let the documentary do the rest of the talking.
Sorry about that. Accidentally. There you go.
John's death was one of the hardest moments myself, my friends have ever had to endure. Seeing my idol behind a casket was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But like always, we rallied. We rallied for OCD, we rallied for John's family, and most importantly, we rallied for John.
It was a perfect day. Couldn't have asked for a more perfect day.
I think John would have been right there. He would have been totally involved. And I think he was totally involved. I think from up above, he was totally involved.
Hey, John, look down upon the beloved Dobbs Ferry that you know and love, and look at all the people that are here today who love you and will continue to love you.
Also, what was amazing is that you and Kevin, his good friends, put this all together in like 2 weeks. And not just getting the whole community together, but you raised over $24,000 for OCD. So you're really his legacy. You're really the ones that are carrying him on.
As I look out over this group of family and friends, I see a piece of John in all of you. While John is not physically present, I can feel his presence in you and your memories. As a local doctor, I was privileged to comfort many Dobbs Ferry patients, and now Dobbs Ferry is comforting our family. Both John and his ultimate coach and mentor, Chuck Fleming, are telling me that it's time to play ball and celebrate at the after party.
The world can learn a lot from John. I mean, it sounds like cheesy, but John was like, he was almost like a saint. I mean, he acted in the way that like, I mean, I'm not necessarily everyone like believes in the Bible and stuff like that, but he acted in the way like that described, like himself was, put everyone else before you. And I mean, not many people can do that. And he was genuine about it. And I think if anyone can learn anything, it's just look around you, respect everyone else, and don't always think about yourself first. Look at the person next to you, look at their problem, and see what you can do to help them.
I just know that so many good things that have happened in my life recently. I just know that a lot of them happened because I know John was looking out for me and always believed in me, and he truly believed in family, his friends.
Can't even tell you how much we miss him. We know he's with us every day, shining down. He'll never leave us.
The biggest fan of everybody, but to be honest, I was a great fan of him. Legend. That's it.
And whenever I see that clip, it always gets me emotional because, you know, plain and simply, we really miss John. And as you could tell, he just had this absolute heart of gold and would do anything to help anyone. And after that happened, it was one of those situations in my own head where, you know, it was very hard to figure out what to do. But after we started that softball tournament, we started realizing just how important community is and the power that we all had. And I remember vividly that specific tournament. People that I've known my whole life, but never talking about mental health, started talking about their own experiences, right? And when you started that kind of chain effect, it's this beautiful feeling of saying, okay, you know, we're going to do whatever it takes to help anyone else that might be suffering know that they aren't alone, know that they can get through this, right? Because I'll never forget, I was at a very dark moment in my life after John died. You know, my OCD was so overwhelming that I didn't even think I could leave my bed. And then I realized after this softball tournament and after all that fight, you know, and fighting that resilience, and I found that not just from myself, I found that from so many people around me. I found that from my therapist. I found that from my best friends, my childhood friends, people that I didn't even really know that well would come up to me and ask me how I was doing and make sure I was doing good. And that feeling of community built so much resilience, right? And I think something that I want to just touch upon is even if you don't have a community now, right? If you feel a little bit isolated, it's okay. Never give up on finding that community. I promise you it's out there. Our Minds Matter is here for you. The JCK Foundation is here for you. We can be here for each other, right? And when we take that extra step to sit there and say, wow, what can I do to help my friends around me? What can I do to help myself? How can I just, I'll tell you, I guarantee it, you by simply being yourself, being willing to talk, being willing to listen, the power of listening really saves and changes lives, right? So when we sit there and we listen to our friends, and we authentically sit there and say, listen, I'm here for you. I love you. I know what you're going through may feel impossible right now, but I promise you I'm here with you and we're going to help get through this. It goes such a long way. And that is what really motivated me to sit here and say, you know, when I went through this, when I was at my darkest point, I did not think I'd be able to get out of it. And I think that is hope for anyone to sit there and say, listen, you might feel like you're at your darkest moment, but it's amazing what this world can give you, right? It's amazing how much happiness there is to come. And it's so beautiful how I was able to really start finding that happiness by being comfortable in my own skin, by opening up, and by finding community. And I promise you, you know, we'll do anything for you. You know, we love you. And we just met over Zoom like 40 minutes ago, but we mean that from the bottom of our hearts because that's the type of person John Kelly was. And that's really what he did for me to help so many other people. So on that note, we're going to dive quickly into our Instagram community on what they did to find community. And then Emily's going to tell a really cool story about how she found community. Because like we said, even if you don't feel it now, we're building it right here. We're starting right now. And community building is a lifelong thing. So our Instagram followers, they find community interesting places, right? When you do what you love with who you love. That's very powerful. For me, that's going out and playing softball with some of my best friends. I just feel alive, right? And I feel so happy to be there in that moment. At large gatherings, especially fundraisers. Hey, raising money and also having a large gathering, there's community right there. Sports. I mean, I'm not the best athlete, but I love sports. And here's another cool one. Stage crew, or being at the barn I go to and being around horses. So I think one thing that's really important is don't give up on finding community, right? It comes in different shapes and forms, and it may be unconventional, but if it works, that's a beautiful thing. And spread that light with other people, because I guarantee you there's another person that sits there and is like, wow, I like horses too. And it grows that way. So on that note, I'll let Emily tell her I love her story about how she found her community.
Thanks, John. So yeah, I wanted to share with all of you a story about how I found community when I was in college. And this might sound a little familiar to some of you, especially as members of Our Minds Matter. So I had a friend that was struggling with her mental health. And at the time, I didn't really know how to talk to her about it. I didn't have the knowledge or the skills or the confidence to have that conversation. So I went to my campus counseling center and I asked about a support group specifically for students that had friends that were struggling with mental illness. And they didn't offer that particular resource at the time. But what I found instead was a group called Active Minds, which is very similar to Our Minds Matter. It's basically the Our Minds Matter for colleges. So within that community, I met a ton of friends, and I learned a lot about mental health. I really found that they listened to me without judgment. They would answer all of my questions without judgment. They could relate to me. A lot of them had shared their experiences with me with their own mental illness, or if they saw a loved one struggling with a mental illness like I did. So I really found that it was a safe space for me to really just be open and be myself. And I found a lot of support and love through them. They encouraged me to go out and start conversations about mental health. They encouraged me to pursue this passion of mine. And now I have this, great job working for the JCK Foundation. I actually met John at an Active Minds event when I was in college. So, you never really know where these communities will take you. Active Minds was a huge mental health resource for me. They really, it really changed my life. So I really hope that Our Minds Matters is that community for you, or that you can find something like that, that community that can be a mental health resource. So now we wanted to transition to the discussion part. So are we able to do small group discussions, or do you want to do the poll?
Yeah, let's do small group discussions. I think that we could go up to 10 minutes for the breakout rooms.
Perfect.
Okay. This discussion, if that sounds good. And so I am going to be staying in the main room. So at any point you get kicked out of the meeting or you feel like it's cut you off for any reason, I'll be here. I will set the timer we'll close after 10 minutes. So it'll look like, if this is your first time doing breakout rooms, it'll look like you're being like shut off from Zoom, but that's not the case. Just give it a few minutes or a few seconds and you'll be in your breakout room. And then after the 10 minutes wrap up, then you'll be prompted to click return to room. But in the meantime, I will be here in the main waiting room in case anything happens as far as technical issues. Any questions from anyone? So our question is, how do we eliminate stigma and build community around mental health? Okay.
I'm excited.
And Emily, do you want to chat the question in the chat box?
Oh, sure.
That way people can reference it since we're not doing screen sharing right now. Okay. All right, so I'm going to open the rooms and you guys should be prompted to join your breakout room. Everyone who's still in the room, let's see, you should be able to click join room. You unmute yourself if you're having any problems joining your breakout room. Hyra and Jada, are you guys having issues joining your room? Okay, no, I'm the only one.
Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in Durga, walk around the neighborhood.
I got kicked out.
All right, let me try to put you back in.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Every day can be a better day despite the challenge. All you gotta do is leave it better than you found it. It's gonna get difficult to stand, but hold your balance. I just say whatever, cause there is no way you're bound. Everyone falls down sometimes, but you just gotta know it'll all be
No notifications popping up.
No.
Weird.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, because for me, it's saying Jada not joined yet. I'm not seeing an option to do anything besides move you. Who are you in the room with?
Lauren.
Okay.
Some days you wake up and nothing works.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's give everyone just a few minutes to make sure no one had any issues joining or leaving their breakout rooms. Yeah, it looks like we're still waiting on a few more people.
All right.
Alrighty. All right. I think we're waiting for 2 more people to join us. Let's see. 21.
One left?
Yeah, 1 left. I think it might be Lauren.
No, I'm here.
Oh, there's Lauren. Okay, let me just double check.
I don't know if anyone, could you also have the option to like leave completely?
Yeah. Oh, there we go. 22. Everyone's back. Welcome back, Hyra. I'm going to turn off the music. So, does anyone from Corinne's group want to share what they talked about?
Yeah, we had great ideas. So it was Aban and Shairi and Akshat and Miss Janet. So whoever wants to go, go.
I can go. So basically, one idea that we had to improve community building was promoting kindness, because me and Shira agreed that kindness is really important to having a strong community. So yeah, we talked about like having kindness exchanges and like just like giving out goodie bags and stuff, just small things to like make people stay.
Yeah, mental health goodie bags and kindness partners. And Akshat, do you want to talk about what you're doing at your school?
Yeah, so like I think I already told Laura, and we have like this a student-led mental health club initiated in our school, and like four of my friends along with me are leading that club. So it would provide like a safe space for students to express themselves, because no teachers will be around us in the club and it would just be us. So in one of the sessions, I would like two or three people, I think, replied that community, like we already are a community if we take students into consideration. Like we already are a community, but the main thing is to consider it and work for the betterment of it.
Amen. That's awesome.
What about from Emily's group? I know we want to be mindful of everyone's time, but want to hear what you guys were discussing. So anyone from Emily's group want to share?
I can share a little bit if no one else wants to. So we talked a little bit about the community. So one of my group, oh, we do have a chat. Oh, okay. I thought it was one of my group members. Sorry. So Muskan actually was talking about how she helped to start a group at her school, and that was a new community mental health resource, which I thought was really cool. We also talked a little bit about how to eliminate stigma, and Jose brought up a really good point, is we have to just go out and, even if we are like diagnosed with a mental health disorder, that doesn't mean that we're crazy, or that, we can't live healthy, happy, normal lives, and just kind of like be an example. And Sam also pointed out that, we also have to educate ourselves and be willing and open to starting conversations about mental health and just kind of putting ourselves out there. So we had a really good discussion about both stigma and building community.
That's great. I love to hear it. What about from John's group?
Anyone from our group want to share? We had some great conversations in there. I'd rather you guys share it than me.
I can go. We really had a great discussion. I'm glad, we didn't get kicked out, but we just talked about our personal experiences in our schools, and how I shared personally at my school, just by normalizing the conversation of mental health, and just being it's okay if you're not having a good day, or it's okay if you're feeling stressed. That's one possible way of eliminating the stigma around mental health and mental illness in schools.
Yeah, and I know Zorae brought up a point too about having an official mental health night at her school that's going to be happening next year, which is really exciting. And just all those different conversations. And another really quick important thing that Samir brought up too was the whole fact of making sure that we're 100% and trying to take care of ourselves, not being afraid to slow down and actually ask for help. It's easy to say, hey, be nice to yourself, ask for help, but actually doing it goes a long way in refueling our tank and being able to do the work that we all need to do. So don't be afraid to refill that tank and keep going. It's okay.
That's great. Thanks. What about really quickly from Lauren's group?
I can speak. We sort of said the most important way to help eliminate stigma is sort of being open and honest and vulnerable about our experiences, which invites other people to do the same.
Oh, great. Thank you. Anyone else from Lauren's group? Bye, Megan. I know you have to hop off. I'm seeing a couple other people are going to hop off. Alrighty. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, John and Emily, for joining us. I think today has been a really great session. And so I think that we've all had a good time. For right now, I'll turn it over to Corrine for a quick mindfulness close out. Yes. Thank you guys for joining.
Thanks so much, everyone. So just to close out, perhaps just closing your eyes and turning your attention inward. And notice how you're feeling in this moment. Dropping attention down to your heart and naming something to yourself that you're grateful for that came out of this session. And setting an intention for the rest of your day. And as you're ready, just coming back, opening your eyes. Have a beautiful week. Thanks so much, John and Emily.
Thank you guys for having us. This was an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. And we left our emails in there if anyone wants to reach out to Emily or myself, if anyone wants to chat further. And I know that they'll be sending out resources as well. So thanks so much for having us here. It was an absolute pleasure being able to meet you all. You guys are all doing such amazing things.